What is up? GoodMicWork back at you, here to review the April 25th, 2016 edition of Monday Night Raw. I'm also going to give you my Payback predictions for this coming Sunday. I thought about doing a separate predictions video later on in the week, but for the most part, from what I can tell, the card is pretty much set in stone. I suppose they could add maybe one more match this week, but for the most part, it looks complete. So I figure I just give you everything in this one video, a Raw review and a Payback predictions video, as well as we'll get into some more follow-up thoughts on the unfortunate passing of Chyna, the death of Prince, and of course, our new NXT champion Samoa Joe. First-time listeners, thanks for stopping by, clicking on this video. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have a second channel. Subscribe that too. Go to my website, GoodMicWorkCommentaries.com. You can download this episode completely for free in MP3 form, or you can listen to me on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. Follow me on Twitter as well, at GoodMicWork, and like my Facebook page. Links to everything is in the description below. Let's jump right into Monday Night Raw tonight, back in the States, which was nice. I think Raw did a horrible rating last week for that taped UK show, which was actually a good show, but, you know, the taped aspect of it really hurts rating-wise. And I think tonight was a lot better. The show was solid, although the crowd could have been a little bit better. It came to us from Hartford, Connecticut tonight. This is literally a home game for the WWE. This is right in their backyard. The site of WrestleMania 11. WWE has a lot of history in that building, and, you know, Hartford just seems like a boring city. I don't know how to put it. I mean, every time they're there, the crowd never really goes too nuts. And unfortunately, the same was true tonight. Not a terribly hot crowd, but at the same time, the show was not that horrible, and I give the show a solid rating. I will be talking about Chyna briefly later on, but we were all wondering what the WWE was going to do tonight on Raw, and they did open up the show with the Chyna graphic acknowledging her passing, so that was a nice start. They also mentioned her on the Raw pre-show as well. Booker T talked a little bit about her. And then, of course, later on in the night, we would see a really nice video package tribute to Chyna as well. So I'll talk about that in just a little bit. The show opens up with Shane McMahon coming out to the ring. He is still in charge of Monday Night Raw, and he gets to talking a little bit, and we see the return of Stephanie McMahon. She makes her way down to the ring. We haven't seen Stephanie on WWE TV since WrestleMania, so this was her return back to the company, and she kind of gets in Shane's face, and she makes the announcement that Vince McMahon, her father, will be announcing on the Payback pay-per-view this Sunday who will be in charge of Monday Night Raw going forward from now on. So that is the big announcement that's supposed to take place at this pay-per-view. So that's kind of a bombshell there. That could be the start of something. But in the meantime, Shane says, that's fine, nothing I can do about that, but I am still in charge tonight, and I am ordering you to leave this ring. Of course, Stephanie puts up a fight, gets in Shane's face. He calls security. They come down and escort her out of the ring. She even beats up one of them, and then they drag her screaming ass up the ramp. Stephanie's awesome. It makes you wonder what kind of an announcement they're going to do at Payback. I mean, there's speculation all over the place as to what this could be. It would be strange for Vince just to announce and just decide, okay, this is who's going to run Raw from now on. You know, we all look back to that Hell in a Cell match with Taker at WrestleMania. What was the point of all that if Vince is just going to decide to switch around the control of Raw between different McMahon family members every few years? You know, what's the point? So we don't know what he's going to say at Payback. I think this could be a couple of things. I mean, we did see Stephanie come out and confront Shane, so there's the rumors and the speculation that maybe Shane could be working with Triple H in the future. I think that's very likely. And a match and a feud and a program between those two seems almost inevitable, especially if the winner gets control of Raw or control of something in the WWE, the big power struggle. So you know Shane and Hunter are going to have something to do with each other in the future. Whether or not Vince's announcement on Payback will affect that at all, I don't know. I mean, I was thinking since maybe the next pay-per-view is Money in the Bank, you could have two matches with something suspended above the ring. You can have the regular Money in the Bank match, and then maybe Triple H and Shane can work for control of WWE or control of Raw or whatever. They could hang a briefcase up there with all the necessary paperwork or something, so I could see that being an option. There's still the rumors of the brand split as well. Vince could come out and say, I can't decide or something, so why don't we put Shane in charge of this and Stephanie and Hunter in charge of that, and then they can still continue their feud together. So I think a brand split is also a possibility. Other than those two scenarios, I don't know what kind of a a swerve they could throw at us. I mean, Payback is in Chicago, so that's a hot crowd, that's a hot town. Big things usually need to happen in that building when they go there, especially for pay-per-view. So hopefully this announcement is not a dud. Hopefully it doesn't fall flat. Hopefully it's meaningful. Hopefully it changes the future. Hopefully they do go in a little bit different of a direction or just shake things up storyline-wise a little bit. And if they put Shane in charge or if they split the brands, that should satisfy that need for us as wrestling fans wanting something different. So I'm not quite sure how to predict what we're going to hear from Vince McMahon. You guys can throw all your ideas at me. Let me know whatever you think might be a good idea for that segment on the pay-per-view. And also, where will that segment be placed? I'm really worried that that might be the main event. We all have really high hopes for Roman Reigns and AJ Styles, and I think we're all hoping for some big swerves and a possible heel turn, but that's only going to happen if it's the main event. If that match happens first and then Vince makes his announcement to close the show, I don't think we see that heel turn, that swerve with Anderson and Gallows and all that shit. I don't think we get that at all. I think we get a basic straight-up match with Roman remaining a babyface. And then maybe to keep that crazy Chicago crowd happy, Vince McMahon can drop a bomb on everybody to close the show. So I think that's still up in the air. I'm hoping that the WWE World Heavyweight title will be defended in the main event of the show in the final segment. That's the way it should be. But depending on which is going to have a bigger impact on storylines going forward, that's going to be your indicator of who's going to be in the main event. If they are going to go with a swerve or a Roman Reigns heel turn or something like that, obviously, that's got to be the last thing we see. But if not, they could go with the McMahon announcement, which might be why they're making this announcement on the pay-per-view itself, because otherwise this is probably something they could do on Raw and hype it up for big ratings. So this might be WWE's way of protecting themselves from the crowd going nuts. If they just have the match and have Roman beat AJ and remain a babyface, the fans can boo all they want. They still have Vince McMahon to come out there and possibly surprise them with a big announcement. So I think that could be the direction they're going in. And it worries me just a little bit because I have really high expectations for this pay-per-view, and I want to see them do something different with Roman Reigns. This shit is getting ridiculous. AJ Styles and Sheamus was the opening match tonight on Monday Night Raw, and AJ beat him with the phenomenal forearm, which he should have. You got to build him up for Roman Reigns. He does have a title shot in 6 days, so he can't go out there and job. So that was nice to see. Next up, we have the New Day coming out to cut a promo, and they are joined by the Vaudevillains and Enzo and Cass. So you got all three of these crazy fucking teams in the ring. And it's very rare when the New Day seems the most normal of everybody out there. But it was a good rub for everybody, good experience for the NXT guys to be out there with the New Day, and pretty entertaining stuff all around. And of course, we have the number one contender match at Payback between the Vaudevillains and Enzo and Cass, and the winners of that will go on to face the New Day at a date to be determined, I guess. And I missed the Prince tribute from Xavier Woods. A lot of people were tweeting about it. I think I had walked away or I just wasn't paying attention. So I don't even know what he said or did or what he played on the trombone. I have no idea. You guys can fill me in on that. But typical Xavier Woods. If I expected anybody to go out there and make any sort of a Prince tribute, he's probably the guy that I would pick. So that's very nice and very classy. Up next, we finally got the big debut of Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson on the WWE main roster. Came out there in some pretty nice-looking ring gear. I like their white robe jacket things that they were wearing. The music, it was a little tough to hear because, as I've mentioned many times, I watch Raw on a stream, so I didn't have the greatest audio. So it was kind of hard to hear what their theme really sounded like, but I'm sure it'll grow on me. And it might be just the first of many renditions of their theme they have. You got to find something that fits them. And it's also possible it might just be a temporary theme because they might be using a current superstar's theme in about 6 days. But they get the match against the Usos and they beat them. They destroy them. Anderson and Gallows had a pretty solid debut. I thought it was a good match. They looked good. Usos put them over and they looked strong as hell. After the match, they went on to attack the Usos some more, which prompted Roman Reigns to come out to the ring and beat up and run off Gallows and Anderson. And Gallows and Anderson also had come out of AJ Styles' locker room right before the match. So this really fuels the potential of them doing a big swerve. I think they're making it really obvious. I mean, I'm dying for them to turn Roman Reigns heel. They fucking have to. This shit is not going to work. You can't just keep doing this. You can't just keep having your babyface champion booed every fucking night. How long are you going to let this go on? So the way they're playing it up so much, I mean, they keep reminding the fans of the history between Gallows and Anderson and AJ Styles, and there's all this talk of, is AJ in on it, and does he know? And Roman Reigns is accusing AJ Styles of knowing that Gallows and Anderson are out to get him. AJ, of course, is playing dumb, and it might wind up turning out that the whole thing was a setup, and Roman Reigns is behind the whole thing, and Gallows and Anderson can create that new faction with Roman Reigns, called the Roman Empire, which I mentioned a couple of months ago, that would be a great name for a faction, and Roman could be the leader of it. They could be heels. And I think it would be good for Roman because he needs some people around him. He needs to be heel. The fans want to boo him. Let them boo him. He can come out on Raw the next night and just lay into the fans like no other, like The Rock did after Survivor Series 1998. Come out there and shit all over the fans for booing him the way they have been over the past year or so. That could set up the Usos all confused, the family members of Roman Reigns who have really been getting shit on by the crowd a little bit as well because of their association with Roman Reigns. So, they could come out there and saying, what are you doing? You actually put your own family at risk in order to form this faction. You had these guys attack and kill us. You owe us an explanation, Roman, and he can kind of disown them and get away and separate himself from his Samoan family members there. That way, the Usos won't get any more shit from the fans for being related to the guy. Roman could attack the Usos and kick the hell out of them. He could attack and betray Dean Ambrose and kick the shit out of him. Gallows and Anderson can be his backup and his boys. AJ Styles could be betrayed by his buddies as well. So it creates a lot of potential and a lot of fun storyline ideas, I think, if they did go through with this swerve of Roman Reigns turning heel and joining up with Gallows and Anderson. So that's really what I want to see happen at Payback, even though WWE's making it a little bit obvious. It might even be a reverse double swerve on the fans. The WWE might be thinking to ourselves, okay, let's really play up the fact that AJ, Gallows, and Anderson are together to get the fans thinking we're going to swerve them and then not swerve them at all. So the business is getting weird, and the way WWE tries to play the fans is getting even weirder, and sometimes I can't figure out what the fuck they're going to do. So we will see what kind of a scenario they throw at that Chicago crowd, and like I said, I'll get into my predictions on Payback here in just a little bit. Next up, we had Sami Zayn taking on Rusev. Sami, of course, has the big match with Kevin Owens at Payback. He ends up beating Rusev with a roll-up. Rusev ended up going for his Accolade finisher, and Sami Zayn countered it and rolled him up for the 3 count. Kevin Owens hit the ring and kicked the shit out of Sami Zayn after the match. Lana looked amazing, as always, in her outfit. I fucking love her. I have got evil, evil thoughts about Lana, let me tell you. Apollo Crews was highlighted again this week in another match, and he had a backstage interview first with Renee Young and Cody Rhodes, or Stardust, who interrupts, and Apollo Crews told Cody that, hey, your dad was a big help to me in NXT. He even came up with my name, which was interesting because they're basically admitting that Apollo Crews is not this guy's name. So I thought that was kind of a funny thing to say, but did acknowledge, how much the American Dream helped him out. Stardust didn't seem to give a shit, and they went out there and had a match, and as usual, Apollo Crews gets the victory. We had a Dean Ambrose and Chris Jericho segment up next. No Ambrose Asylum this week, just Dean comes out there and cuts a promo. Makes fun of Chris Jericho a little bit, talks about his scarf, which I love Jericho's scarves. Jericho then hits the ring next, complete with scarf and vest, and the two men start brawling. Jericho gets the upper hand by tripping Dean on the announce table. He smashes his face on the monitor, and then Jericho puts Dean in the walls of Jericho on the announce table the same way he did to Triple H all those years ago when Triple H tore his quad. So I like that segment. Jericho's an amazing heel, and this is a good opponent for Dean. Dean, is going to wipe the floor with Jericho at Payback. I have no doubt he needs to bounce back from that loss to Brock Lesnar, and it's pretty obvious the way they're going, and Jericho always puts it all out there. It was awesome. I love the segment. Natalya also won her tune-up match for Payback. She, of course, is getting the title shot against Charlotte in a few days. She takes on Emma tonight, makes quick work of her with the sharpshooter, and Charlotte was at ringside doing commentary. So their match at Payback as well should be interesting. Of course, we know Bret Hart's going to be in Natalya's corner, and Ric Flair is going to be in Charlotte's corner. And let me tell you, man, what the hell is up with Bret Hart? I mean, I mentioned in my last commentary when I talked about Chyna that I was just illustrating the point that even people that you love, you sometimes don't agree with. And that Bret Hart has really been running his mouth, and he's an idol of mine. I mean, he's like my favorite wrestler of all time. And I heard him say some really nasty things about Vader. And then another story I saw today, he was quoted in some interview basically saying that he has no desire whatsoever to appear at Payback. He doesn't even want to be there. He's just going to do it because, okay, they need me or Natalya needs me, but I really don't feel like it. My wrist hurts. Whatever the fuck else he said, he basically just had no interest. And it just blows my mind how little of a fuck Bret gives about anything. I mean, he's about to be in the same building with a whole bunch of people he's talking shit about. Every time you hear him in an interview, he's insulting a former wrestler that he worked with. He's insulting the WWE or Triple H or Stephanie McMahon or the writers or the wrestlers or anybody like that. Now he's saying, yeah, I got to be at this fucking pay-per-view and I don't even want to go. Jesus Christ, Brett. I mean, it's almost funny. I mean, in a way, you got to admire Brett that he's almost he's turning into like a senile old man. They just say anything. And it's almost like you just chalk it up to, well, that's just because they're old and senile. And Brett, you're chalking a lot of this shit up to Brett just being Brett. That's what we've come to expect from him. That's the way he is. I don't know if it's his own little personal revenge on the WWE. He knows that he's got his Legends deal and all that, and he can just go around and say whatever he wants about anybody. And if WWE doesn't like it, they don't have to bring him in anymore. He doesn't give a shit. So there's a big part of me that admires that, but there's another big part of me that says, Brett, at least think what you say sometimes, because every now and then you insult somebody that doesn't deserve it. I mean, he insulted Vader a couple of weeks ago. You know, and some people might have their opinions on Vader, but at this stage in 2016, what's the point of insulting Vader and how he used to work 20 years ago? Who fucking cares? You know, to be so mean-spirited like that, especially when Brett and Vader, I always thought, got along. It just makes you wonder what the hell goes on in Bret Hart's head sometimes. So, anyway, Bret is a mess. He doesn't want to be at this pay-per-view, but we'll see what happens on Sunday. I mean, I'm going to be happy to see him, especially out there with Ric Flair, who he won his very first WWE title from 24 years ago, is going to be kind of a thrill for me. But I find it quite hilarious that he just really has no interest in even showing up at this show. I'm sure that's going to make your niece feel really good, Bret. So maybe think before you speak sometimes there, Hitman. Poor Damian Sandow can't catch a break. I almost forgot he existed, and he was going to have a match tonight on Raw. He was supposed to get his ass kicked and lose to Baron Corbin, but the match never even got underway. Probably just a rib on Damian. You know, they fly him to TV every week, and they don't use him at all. So I don't know what he did to deserve this treatment. I have no idea. Tonight, he was involved in a match that didn't even happen. Ziggler came out and attacked Baron Corbin when he was making his entrance, and they brawled. They're going to have their big payback match this Sunday. And that was the end of that. We get a Miz segment up next. He's out there with Maurice talking about his Intercontinental title defense against Cesaro at Payback. Cesaro then comes out there and interrupts. They start bickering back and forth on the mic. Miz starts rolling off a whole bunch of movie quotes, trying to impersonate Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and Clint Eastwood and, you know, all this shit. And then Cesaro just catches him with an uppercut and knocks him right out. So that was their little furthering of their match for the IC strap at Payback. And finally, the main event, Roman Reigns taking on Alberto Del Rio. Solid match. It was okay. We knew we were going to see some sort of a confrontation between Gallows and Anderson or AJ or all of them and Roman Reigns. We knew something was like that was going to happen eventually. Right near the end of the match, Gallows and Anderson come out to the rampway with their music, but Roman Reigns, even though he's distracted by that, is still able to spear and pin Del Rio and win the match, prompting Anderson and Gallows to come into the ring and attack Roman Reigns. AJ Styles then runs out there and tries to break it up. He tries to stop them from hurting Roman Reigns, and then as soon as he gets them out of the ring, he turns around and gets nailed with a Superman punch by Roman Reigns, which prompts Gallows and Anderson to get back in the ring and start attacking him some more. Once he fights the two of them off, AJ has come to, and he jumps and nails Roman Reigns with the phenomenal forearm to close the show. So that is a good way to end it. It still keeps you guessing on what the hell they're going to do at Payback, and I outlined all the different scenarios we could see a little bit ago, so you guys can let me know what other ideas you have, what direction they could go in, and how they can book this main event. Interestingly, like I said, they're either going to do a big swerve and do something awesome involving a Roman Reigns heel turn, or they're not going to do anything, and they're going to have Roman beat AJ, and they're going to have Vince's announcement be the main event. So we're probably looking at one of those two scenarios, but I just hope they do something eventually, even if it's not at Payback, even if they want to drag this shit out until Money in the Bank, or I don't know, whenever. Just do it at some point. Obviously, this shit with Roman Reigns is not going to work as a babyface. He's getting a worse reaction than John Cena. Can you believe that? At least when John Cena came out there, yeah, you heard a lot of boos, but you could also hear a lot of cheers from the younger audience. You're not getting that with Roman Reigns. It's nearly 90% boos, where with John Cena, it was like, I don't know, 70-30 or something like that. It's just really bad, and it cannot go on forever. And Roman Reigns, think about him. That scenario I laid out earlier. Think about him turning heel, aligning himself with a faction, naming the faction after himself, telling the fans to go fuck themselves, attacking his own family members, turning his back on his Shield brother, and basically not giving a fuck. That's the Roman Reigns I want to see. At least that way you're getting the type of boos that you want. Right now you're getting fans booing him because they don't want to see him. You'd prefer to have the fans booing him because they hate his fucking guts. So WWE, please, goddamn it, do something at Payback. I'm begging you. Before we get into my Payback predictions, I do just want to mention a couple of more things. We also saw a Chyna video package tonight on Raw, which I was really hoping they would do. I was hoping that they would not only just do the graphic to open the show and that's it. I was like, they got to do something else. At least the commentators or the announcers have to mention her. They got to show some sort of a video package, and they did. And that was nice to see. They showed a lot of tweets from people all over the business. A lot of people showing Chyna a ton of love. It's sad. It's just such a heartbreaking story, and it's just one of these things as wrestling fans that we have to constantly deal with. These sad stories and these sad situations. And I mean, my heart goes out to Chyna that she wasn't able to keep it together. And I talked a lot about her when I made the video about her passing a few days ago. So if you want my thoughts on Chyna, you can go back and look at last episode where I talked about her for about 15 minutes. But one of the things I didn't really mention about her was whether or not, or how much blame I put on the McMahons. I thought about getting into that, but I really wanted to just kind of acknowledge and honor her death and career and her life as best I could in that video without trying to defend or not defend who was right and who was wrong. And a lot of people were asking me on Twitter and conveying to me their thoughts that they blame a lot of what happened to Chyna on Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and Vince McMahon for kind of pushing her out. And I'll be the first one to admit that situation with the three of them, with Triple H leaving Chyna for Stephanie, that's a shitty situation for anybody to be in. Nobody denies that. You got to feel bad for Chyna because she's going to be left out. And then with all the awkwardness there, the only thing to really do was to push her out and have her leave the WWE. It was going to be too weird to have her there. So I understand that Chyna, was done wrong. I mean, no laws were broken. Triple H and Stephanie aren't evil people. They just fell in love. You can't fault them for that. They weren't deliberately trying to hurt Chyna with any malice or anything like that. It was just a shitty situation. Breakups happen all the time. But I'm a firm believer in it's all about how you handle difficult situations. Some people can face a difficult situation head on. Others fold like origami. And at the end of the day, no matter how unfair it was to Chyna for the things that happened to her, you still make your own decisions. And for people to actually blame Triple H and Stephanie and Vince for Chyna being addicted to drugs and having mental issues and all of that, that's Chyna's fault. Chyna chose that path. I mentioned that she did that interview a few months after she left WWE on Off the Record with Michael Landsberg, and she had her shit together. It's not like as soon as this ended for her, she dove right into alcohol and drugs. She didn't. She had her act together for a while. It wasn't until maybe she got with X-Pac or maybe had some other relationships or ventured into some wilder lifestyles that she started having problems. And then, we saw the way it ended for her. I mean, all the way up till the end there, every time she did an interview, every time she appeared on her YouTube channel or anywhere, she seemed really kooky and crazy. And all of that was very sad, but still, that's the path that Chyna chose. And I wish she could have gotten help. I wish she had better people around her. She died alone and sad by herself. And to me, that breaks my heart for her because no matter what I ever said about Chyna, I never, ever, ever in a million years wanted that ending for her. And it's one thing as wrestling fans that we all suffer from constantly. We constantly see these stories that break our fucking hearts. And this was one of them. And this was not another black eye that wrestling needed. I'm really getting tired of these scenarios and these situations. So, yes, what happened to Chyna was fucked up. I can totally understand people having animosity towards Triple H and towards Stephanie, but like I said, at the end of the day, you make your own decisions, and Chyna made hers. And now we're left with a situation like with the Macho Man, Randy Savage, who after all these years we were wondering, why the hell is this guy not in the Hall of Fame? Why the hell isn't he not mended fences with Vince McMahon and the WWE? And then he winds up dying. And then WWE has to kind of half-ass put him in the Hall of Fame. At least with the Ultimate Warrior, he was able to make up with WWE right before he died. Now we're in another one of these Macho Man Randy Savage situations with Chyna, where, yeah, she's probably going to go into the Hall of Fame, but it's going to be kind of too little too late. And if she did go in, people were asking me, should Triple H induct her? Fuck yes, he should induct her. There's nobody else to induct her. I know that's going to be weird. I know that's going to be awkward. I don't know how some fans will feel about that. But when you think about all the people that could potentially induct her into the Hall of Fame, there's only one choice. She was huge for Triple H's career. Had it not been for her, we don't even know if Triple H would be where he is today. Because he was Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and then he kind of had multiple different bodyguards when he was trying to find his character in 1996 and 1997. It wasn't until they brought in Chyna and formed DX that he really got on the map as a big player, and she helped him do that. I mean, she was a great heater. Putting a female bodyguard with a guy who he can hide behind is a great way to get heat. It worked, and Triple H is a star much in part to Chyna's association with him. The whole thing with Chyna is sad. My heart goes out to her, her family, and anybody else affected by this. X-Pac, incidentally, has been silent on Twitter. He has not said a word since she died, and it makes me think that that's really hit him hard. And it had to. I mean, who knows what's going through poor X-Pac's mind right now. And it's just a really unfortunate situation. So rest in peace, Chyna. You will be missed. Prince, of course, musical icon, passed away this week. That was kind of a shocker because he is about as big as an icon as you can get in the music industry. He was brilliant beyond words, and I don't even know where to begin to talk about him and his career. I could talk for 3 hours about it, but I just want to tell you a quick little story about a friend of mine. I have a friend who is literally, I think, Prince's biggest fan, always has been. I've known this guy for about 20 years, and he loves Prince more than anything else. He loves Prince, get this, to such a degree that when Prince passed away earlier this week, people sent him flowers. His friends and family sent flowers to his house because they knew that it devastated him. And I don't think he was the only person that had that level of admiration for Prince, but I could relate because as a wrestling fan, when he told me that, I'm like, I can relate. I mean, I've watched so many of my heroes, so many people that I've idolized pass away. So many people that are huge parts of my memory pass away. Just what happened with Chyna a couple of days ago, the day before Prince died, is when Chyna died. And even though I wasn't really in love with Chyna or anything like that, she was still a big part of my wrestling memories. And it's sad, and it feels like a piece of you dies when your heroes die like that. So I can completely relate. I know one day in the future when Bret Hart passes away, that's going to be a very difficult day for me. I mean, a very difficult day. Because it feels like it's a part of you, There's so many years you grow up and you idolize somebody and they're your hero, and then they pass away, you're affected by it. So my heart goes out to everybody that was affected by Chyna's death or anybody's death or Prince or anything like that. 2016 has been a shitty year so far. I mean, we've lost a lot of people, and we're only in April. So the history books might just want to skip 2016. I don't know. Moving on to a little more pleasant news now, we had a big title change take place earlier this week on a house show of all places. Finn Balor's long reign as NXT champion has come to an end. He was defeated by Samoa Joe at a house show in Lowell, Massachusetts. I like that. I'm glad they did that. Shake things up a bit. Let people know that anything can happen when you go to one of these shows. And to have such a lengthy title reign like that come to an end at a house show of all places, I thought was nice. I like to see that every now and then. I don't like to see it all the time, but every now and then when WWE does that, I always like it and I always appreciate it. Congratulations to Samoa Joe. Congratulations to Finn Balor on an awesome NXT title run. I am so ready for this guy to come up to the main roster. He is such an interesting, unique character. I love his entrance. I love the whole presentation of Finn Balor. One of my favorite overall characters in professional wrestling right now. So he's probably going to get a rematch. Hopefully he'll wrap up his business with Samoa Joe and get his ass to the main roster as soon as possible. I don't foresee him really getting involved in the Roman Reigns AJ Styles match really right now. I think that would be weird placement. But Balor, when he comes in, who knows if he'll be on his own or if he'll be a part of this potential Bullet Club or some sort of faction we see in the future, who knows. But with him dropping that NXT title, you now know that opens up the door for him to appear on the main roster probably pretty soon, so I'm excited for that. I also thought it was interesting that Samoa Joe won that belt in that building. That building has a lot of WWE history. First of all, somebody also told me that Samoa Joe won his first TNA title in that building as well, but when I saw where he won it, I always recognized that building because WWE used to run shows there all the time back in the 90s. As a matter of fact, 2 very significant Monday Night Raws took place in that very building. The first one was the infamous night when Shawn Michaels forfeited the WWE title when he lost his smile in 1997, right before WrestleMania 13. He gave up the belt when he was supposed to defend it and drop it, I believe, that night to Sid. He forfeited instead, and they gave the belt to Bret Hart at the Final Four pay-per-view a couple of days later. That was also the same night that The Rock won his first ever singles belt in the WWE, defeating Triple H for the Intercontinental title. And then a few months later, at the end of 1997, in December, they did a Christmas show there with DX, and that was when Shawn, the screw job had just happened. Shawn was WWE champion and the European champion. Sergeant Slaughter said, hey, you haven't defended that European title in forever. You got to put the belt on the line tonight against Triple H. And DX set the whole thing up to fool Sergeant Slaughter, to make him think that they were starting a feud together and starting to not get along, and they were going to have a match for the title. And then Shawn just laid down for Triple H and allowed him to win the European title. They even came out in their robes and showed their ass cracks with Santa hats on their dicks to the world and everything. So those were 2 really big Raw shows that I remember taking place in that building. So a lot of history there, and I'm glad that Samoa Joe winning a belt in that arena could be added to the list of cool things that have taken place, because that's a smaller building. WWE will never go back there for a Raw again. They were doing that in the 90s because the crowds and the houses were in the shitter back then. But for NXT, it's perfect. It's the perfect amount of people. So I'm glad that that title change took place in that building. I recognized it right away when I saw the footage of Joe winning the belt. I said, hey, I know that place. I would recognize it anywhere, which just goes to show you what a crazy wrestling memory I have, especially about shit back in the 90s. But anyway, before I get out of here, I'm going to roll through these Payback predictions pretty quick. I wrote all the matches down, and I predicted my winners, and I kind of have some interesting ones. So let's start at the bottom. The United States title, I think they should just rename the Kickoff Show title. I believe this is the 2nd or 3rd pay-per-view in a row that the U.S. belt has been defended on the pre-show. So John Cena needs to get his ass back and contend for this belt or something, because they haven't given a shit about it since it's been around his waist. But Kalisto is champion, and he's going to be defending against Ryback again. He beat Ryback at WrestleMania in the kickoff match. Now they're having a match again. I mean, part of me is worried that Ryback can win, but I'm picking Kalisto to retain on the pre-show. We're getting Baron Corbin versus Dolph Ziggler. That one's pretty obvious. You know Ziggler's going to do the job to help get Corbin on the map, so Baron Corbin's who I predict in that. Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. This is another tough one that I think could go either way, but Zayn, I think, needs a big victory, so I'm predicting him to defeat Kevin Owens in a very, very, very good match, but Zayn comes out on top. And I also don't think that will be the end of the feud either, so I'm sure they're going to do something again. Dean Ambrose versus Chris Jericho in another relatively easy match to predict, although I thought Chris Jericho and AJ Styles was an easy match to predict at WrestleMania 32 and I was wrong. But in this one, you gotta pick Dean Ambrose. There's no way he's going to lose to Jericho. Ambrose takes this one. Vaudevillains versus Enzo and Cass in the finals of the #1 contender tag team tournament sponsored by Bootios. I'm going to predict the Vaudevillains. I have a feeling that maybe the Dudleys might do something to interfere. I think they can run with Enzo and Cass maybe just a tiny bit more. And plus, we saw the miscommunication between the Dudleys last week on Raw, and I mentioned a possible split between the Dudley boys in the future. So maybe if they make their presence felt in this match, cost Enzo and Cass the match, they can continue their feud together, giving Vaudevillains the title shot against the New Day, because I don't see them beating the New Day, and I think if New Day is going to work with Enzo and Cass, maybe that comes a little bit later. WWE Women's title on the line, of course. Charlotte taking on Natalya. Ric Flair in Charlotte's corner. Bret Hart in Natalya's corner. I don't know. I mean, part of me thinks that Natalya could win here because Charlotte beat her in this exact same type of match in NXT a couple of years ago with the two legends at ringside. But, you know, Charlotte's on a roll with that belt. And I know it was the Divas belt and then it's turned into the women's title. But she, you know, I mentioned last week that she could potentially break Nikki Bella's record, and people were like, well, GoodMicWork, how can she break it when the belt is only a month old? I don't know if her reign necessarily has to start all over again. So I don't know how WWE is going to play that, but I just have this feeling that they're not done with Charlotte holding that belt yet, and she's going to find a way to win this match. All I want to see is Bret Hart put Ric Flair in the sharpshooter. That's all I care about. Beyond that, I don't give a fuck what they do. So Natty could win the title. That would be great, but I'm going to predict Charlotte to retain. We also have the Intercontinental title match, Miz defending against Cesaro. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say Cesaro wins, but The Miz keeps the belt. I think Cesaro's going to win by DQ, and they're going to wrestle again. Cesaro's going to do a little bit of chasing, I think, before he wins the belt. I think he has to. I don't know if I even want to see Cesaro win the Intercontinental title at Payback. I'd like to see him win it, maybe at the next pay-per-view or a little bit down the road and make this an actual program. The Intercontinental title has bounced around a lot as well. I mean, we had a one-day title reign with Zack Ryder at WrestleMania, and then it went right to The Miz. For him to drop it at the very next pay-per-view, I'm almost not ready to see it yet. Plus, the thing he has going on with Maurice and his wife right now, I think is working. I like the two of them together. The Intercontinental title belt itself kind of fits the whole act that they're doing, that pretentious, snobby Hollywood-type act with all this gold. So I think Cesaro beats The Miz, has him beat. Somehow Maurice probably gets involved, causes a disqualification or whatever. Or maybe The Miz could actually get the pin by cheating or something like that. But I think we're going to get a Cesaro victory, but not winning the title. And finally, the main event, of course, Roman Reigns taking on AJ Styles. I've already discussed all the potential scenarios, so I'm not going to rehash all of that. All I'm going to do is give you a winner, and that winner is going to be Roman Reigns. I just don't see AJ Styles winning the WWE title at Payback. I just don't. I don't think anybody wants to see a straight-up match between these guys with Roman Reigns winning. However, I will say, because I'm positive and I enjoy professional wrestling, if those two guys go out there and they have a fantastic match, and the crowd is into it, and this is awesome chants going on, and it's full of great spots, and they work well together, and Roman Reigns wins, and that's it. There's no heel turn, there's no interference from Gallows and Anderson, nothing like that, but we get like a 4-star match. I'm fine with that. Whatever, as long as those guys perform in the ring is all I care about. So if they can give us a really good in-ring performance, I can let go of the fact that we saw no surprises, but storyline-wise, what we're seeing with Roman Reigns, we have to see a fucking heel turn at some point. So WWE better either lay that groundwork at Payback, or they've already laid it and it's going to culminate at Payback. One or the other. They got to do fucking something. If you notice, I didn't predict one single title change on the entire pay-per-view. I actually think we're going to go the entire show without any belts changing hands, and that's pretty crazy considering it's taking place in Chicago. Chicago is not a crowd to screw with. Give them a good show, give us something, is all I ask for. And when you look at everything that's going on right now in the WWE with the main event situation and then, of course, the struggle between Stephanie and Shane, there is a potential for there to be a lot of changes to the WWE after Payback, depending on what happens. That is it for me. I am out of here. I am currently working on a Q&A. I don't know if I'll get it up this week before Payback or not. It'll probably be up a week from now, maybe midweek next week after Monday Night Raw, after Payback and post-Payback Monday Night Raw are over. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday of that week, I will release the Q&A. So if you want to send in a question, there's still some time. I've already got hundreds of questions to look at, but I don't mind taking a peek at some more, so send them to me at GoodMicWork@gmail.com. Just include your name and where you're from, or if you want me to plug a YouTube channel or Twitter handle or anything like that, just let me know, and ask me any questions you want, and I'll get a Q&A up here in just a few days. So I will catch you immediately following Payback. I will be home watching it live, and I will be live tweeting. So I will be up here a couple hours after the pay-per-view to discuss what we saw and the fallout from that. That'll be the next time you hear from me, so I'll talk to you in a few days. Until then, peace.